I want to talk today on the subject of Israel, Iran, Russia, and its allies. These countries are in the news these days. We know Iran's feelings about Israel. They've been very clear. They've said that they will drive them into the sea. And we see Russia, they went through this period of glasnost as the Berlin Wall came down and satellite countries became free independent states. But now Russia seems to be on the move again and flexing its muscles in places like Georgia, and even sending military ships to see Chavez and visit Cuba, places like this. So, does the Bible have anything to say about any of this? Was any of this known? Israel were captives in the land of Babylon, and this is 685 BC, somewhere around there. All of Israel had been taken out of their land, and prior to that, the 10 tribes had also been taken out in a previous invasion. And yet, Ezekiel could see a future where Israel would come back into their land and possess it once again. And that's pretty incredible. We could pick it up in Ezekiel chapter 36. And verse 8 it reads, "But ye, O mountains of Israel, ye shall shoot forth your branches and yield your fruit to my people of Israel, for they are at hand to come." Verse 10, further down it reads, "The cities shall be inhabited, and the wastes shall be builded." Verse 11, "And I will settle you after your old estates." In verse 24, "I will take you from among the heathen and gather you out of all countries and will bring you into your own land." And in verse 33, "I will also cause you to dwell in the cities, and the waste shall be inhabited," or builded. Literally hundreds and hundreds of years have passed since Ezekiel's visions prophesied of these events. And Israel was sifted through the nations. And always persecuted. Always persecuted. We know because they kept the Sabbath. It was a sign between them and God. And this is not true for all of Israel. Just a remnant kept the Sabbath. Many were scattered and lost forever. But there were those who would keep the Sabbath, and so they were identified, and all through the ages they've been persecuted. And those who started keeping the Sabbath, the Gentiles who started keeping the Sabbath from the early 1st century on, also persecuted for the sign of God, keeping that Sabbath. Because the early church followed the teachings of the first apostles and the practices of Jesus, and they kept the Sabbath. And it wasn't until well after the church was established that the ideas of Sunday worship came in. It was the false teaching of Jesus rising on Sunday. According to Matthew 28:1, Jesus rose at the end of the Sabbath as it started to dawn towards the first day of the week. So we know he did not rise on the Sabbath, and therefore, or Sunday, and therefore there's no justification. In any event, Israel sifted through the nations, persecuted, and finally we come down to the 1900s and World War II. And a terrible man had this idea that he would totally exterminate the Jewish race. And you wonder where he got his inspiration from. In fact, if Hitler had been successful in exterminating the Jewish race, he would have proven that God's word was not true. he would have proved that possibly there wasn't even no God. Because God had said through Ezekiel right here that they would possess the land again. And many other places, Jeremiah and Isaiah spoken of, that Israel would come back into their land. After World War II, the remnant that was left, that were not slaughtered, did indeed come back into the land of Israel and fought for an independent state. And Israel came to be a nation in the 40s. You know what? That's remarkable. Because God said it would happen. And it has happened. That in fact, alone that fact is fulfillment of prophecy. And to me, fulfillment of prophecy, fulfillment of God's Word, is evidence, absolute evidence that there is a God. Absolute proof that God exists. And God is very exact in His prophecy, in the words He gives to His prophets. Very exact in the words He gives to His prophets. He's able to tear down nations and raise up nations. And He's able to tell us in the order, the sequence of events that will occur with the nations. Only a God that can foresee all things would be able to do something like this. No man has ever done it. No prophet has ever done it on his own. Never happened. In Ezekiel 37, we see the vision of the dry bones, and that appears to be Israel coming alive again, back as a dead nation, back into a living nation that would rise up. And then in Ezekiel chapter 38, we see the attack by Gog. Pick it up in verse 2. Set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. And he speaks in verse 4 that he will turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army. Horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, given a great company, with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Who would be with them? Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. And if you have an older Bible, it may have said Persia and may have said Put. So these were the older names for these countries. Cush. Cush was the name for Ethiopia, and Put being the name for Libya. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah, and the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee. And when is this going to happen? It says in verse 8, after many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword. So Israel's the land brought back from the sword, and that's true. When is it going to happen? In the latter years. Almost in the last years. Towards the end of the time of the Gentiles. The Gentiles were given a time from this time that Ezekiel was in Babylon until Jesus returns. It's the time of the Gentiles. So in the very last days of the time of the Gentiles, this event would occur. And they come against the mountains of Israel. A great company of nations. Verse 15 says, thou shalt come from thy place out of the north parts, thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses. A great company and a mighty army.